Have you ever stopped to think if you're just putting out fires in your mind, or if you're actually rebuilding the house you live in? Most of us learn to cope with symptoms: anxiety, sadness, stress, but is that the same as truly recovering? You continue. I want to ask you something simple. If at any point you feel this message resonates with you, please like it. This shows me that I'm not alone in this struggle, and if you know someone who also needs to hear this, please share it. Maybe they're at the exact point of deciding between treating symptoms or beginning a true recovery. And of course, comment below. Do you feel like you're just controlling your symptoms, or do you believe you're on the path to true healing? Your answer may help others who read it too. Now, take a deep breath with me, because what I'm about to show you might change the way you view your mental health from now on. Asterisk, have you ever wondered if the pills, the routines, the fleeting distractions you cling to are truly saving you? Or if they are nothing more than bandages on wounds that continue to bleed in silence? What if every quick fix you rely on is only a lullaby, a gentle lie whispered to keep you from hearing the real scream beneath your skin? They told you that balance could be bought in bottles, that calm could be summoned with breathing counts, that healing could be reduced to a checklist.
Ow!
But what if that promise is only a shadow, a fragile bridge that collapses the moment the storm inside you grows louder? What if healing is not about silencing the noise, but about daring to step into it? There is a difference between surviving and being reborn, but most people confuse one for the other. Surviving feels safe, fit keeps you afloat in shallow waters. But what if your soul was never meant to tread water? What if the very act of clinging to temporary relief is the chain that keeps you from reaching the shore? The question is not whether you want to feel better. The real question is, do you want to keep sedating the symptoms? Or are you willing to face the terrifying possibility of transformation? Because healing, the kind that rewrites your inner story, does not comfort it. Confronts. It tears apart illusions before it offers peace. So listen closely, because every word from this moment on is a fragment of a hidden map. If you skip even 1 second, you might lose the piece that reveals the truth, the thin, invisible line between a life medicated into numbness and a life resurrected into meaning. The choice is not abstract, it is yours, and it is already unfolding. Asterisk, the illusion of immediate relief. We live in an age addicted to speed of answers, speed of comfort, speed of silence over discomfort. The quicker the pill dissolves, the faster the meditation app hums, the sooner we can convince ourselves that the fire inside has been extinguished. But tell me, has it really disappeared, or has it only learned to hide in the shadows, waiting for the night when you are too tired to keep pretending? Quick fixes masquerade as saviors. They arrive with promises sweet enough to numb the ache, but behind their shine lies a quiet betrayal. Because each time you silence the symptom without touching its roots, the wound learns to grow more cunning, more silent, more invisible. Relief is purchased, but at the cost of truth. Perhaps you have felt it, that subtle dissonance after the temporary calm fades, leaving you emptier than before. It is like drinking from a cup of salt water. You quench your thirst for a moment, only to find your body even more parched. Why does no one tell you that false healing deepens the hunger? Why does no one admit that sometimes better is worse than the pain itself? Society applauds your ability to function, to keep moving, to perform your role with a smile, but is functioning the same as healing? Smiling the same as peace? Or are you simply rehearsing normality while your inner self suffocates in silence? The applause you receive is hollow when it masks the truth of your unseen struggle. Every quick fix is like a plaster over a fracture, hides the crack, but the bone beneath is still broken. What if the longer you leave it covered, the more fragile you become? What if the weight of your unspoken battles is quietly bending you into someone you no longer recognize? Healing cannot be outsourced to shortcuts. Still, you return to them because they are easy, accessible, praised by others as proof that you are taking care of yourself. But let me ask you this. Is self-care the art of avoidance or the courage of confrontation? Can you really call it care if it keeps you from knowing who you truly are beneath the masks of relief? There is danger in mistaking numbness for peace. Numbness is a silence imposed, a trick of the mind that convinces you the storm has passed, when in truth, the sky is only holding its breath. Peace is different. Peace is the storm itself, dissolving into clarity, leaving behind not silence, but symphony. Do you feel the difference? Imagine carrying a lantern through a cave but refusing to look at the walls. The darkness recedes for a moment, but the monsters remain untouched, unseen, unchallenged. That is what quick relief does. It lights your path for a second, without ever revealing the beasts waiting at the edges of your vision. And what is unseen, over time, becomes unbearable. So the question sharpens. How long will you continue worshiping temporary relief as if it were salvation? How long until you realize that shortcuts do not erase the journey, they only delay your arrival? Every detour has a cost, and the toll is always higher than you expected. Perhaps tonight or tomorrow, or in the moment when your mask finally cracks. You will see it. Quick fixes were never meant to save you. They were meant to distract you, to keep you suspended between pain and truth. And in that suspension, life itself becomes diluted. The question is no longer whether relief feels good, but whether it costs you the very soul you are trying to protect. The prison of comfort. Comfort is seductive. Whispers in your ear that you have done enough, that you deserve rest, that pain should be avoided at all costs. But comfort has a shadow, a hidden cost that you rarely calculate. For its embrace, you become smaller, safer, quieter, and when safety becomes a cage, have you really lived, or have you simply survived under a velvet shroud? The world teaches you to seek ease. Therapies promise quick tranquility. Screens promise distraction. Routines promise predictability. Yet, ease, when worshipped, becomes its own addiction. You learn to fear disruption, to dread discomfort, to run from any sensation that threatens to reveal the truth beneath your practiced calm. And so, comfort transforms into a prison with invisible bars. Have you noticed how the pursuit of comfort often disguises itself as healing? A warm drink, a gentle mantra, a curated moment of stillness, all beautiful, all worthy, but all temporary. They soothe the surface, while the deep fractures remain untouched. Like painting over rotting wood, the beauty lasts only until the cracks widen, demanding to be seen. Discomfort, on the other hand, carries the keys. It is in the unease, the trembling, the breaking, that transformation finds its doorway. Yet how often do you refuse to enter? Many times have you mistaken discomfort for danger, when in truth, it was the signal that your soul was on the edge of growth. Comfort tells you to stay where you are. Discomfort dares you to move. You tell yourself that healing should feel gentle, but who told you that lie? Birth is violent, storms are chaotic, metamorphosis is destruction before beauty. Why would the rebirth of your mind be any different? To cling to comfort is to reject the natural law of transformation, that nothing new is born without first unmaking what once was. And still, comfort calls. It is familiar, like a lullaby sung in childhood, convincing you that if you stay small, you will stay safe. But safety without growth is stagnation. A river that stops moving becomes poison to itself. A mind that clings to comfort rots from within, while convincing itself it is whole. Perhaps the true enemy of healing is not pain, but comfort itself. Pain wakes you. Pain demands attention. Pain shakes the illusions until they crack. But comfort lulls you back to sleep, persuading you that there is nothing left to be done. Which then is more dangerous? The fire that burns, or the silence that smothers? Every time you choose comfort over confrontation, you make an unspoken pact to remain half alive, to live only within the walls you already know. But beyond those walls lies the life that terrifies you precisely because it is real. And real life is never comfortable, it is raw, unpredictable, and alive. So ask yourself, are you healing, or are you decorating your prison? Are you mending your soul, or are you polishing the bars of your comfort until they shine bright enough to blind you? The answer is hidden, not in what you say, but in the choices you repeat when no one is watching. Because one day, the comfort you worship will betray you. The cracks will return, the silence will shatter, and you will stand at the threshold once again. The difference is that the longer you wait, the harder the choice becomes. Comfort buys time, but time is never free. It is borrowed from the life you were meant to live. Asterisk. The gateway of pain. Pain is the teacher no one wishes for, yet it is the only one that refuses to lie. While comfort hides the truth behind soft whispers, pain reveals it with a scream you cannot ignore. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait for your readiness. It arrives uninvited, tearing through the illusions you carefully built. And in that moment, the question is not whether you will feel it, but whether you will listen. We are conditioned to fear pain as the enemy. Society hands us manuals of avoidance. Medicate it, distract it, bury it beneath productivity. But what if pain is not punishment? What if pain is invitation? Every wound you carry, every scar you hide, could be a doorway into the depths of who you are, into the fragments of your story that remain unclaimed. The paradox is cruel. The very sensation you run from is the one that could free you. Like fire cleansing a forest, pain burns away the false, the fragile, the unnecessary. Yet how often do you mistake that burning for destruction when it is, in fact, the beginning of renewal? Pain does not kill, it unmasks. Consider this. When was the last time you allowed yourself to sit in the full weight of your pain without numbing, without fleeing, without disguising it as something else? The silence that follows such surrender is not empty, it is fertile. Beneath the ache lies the seed of transformation, waiting for your courage to water it. Pain speaks a language that the mind resists, but the soul understands. It says, "There is something here you have not faced." It says the life you are living is too small for the truth you carry inside. And if you dare to listen, it shifts from enemy to guide, from tormentor to healer. But to listen is dangerous, is it not? Because pain demands sacrifice. It will strip you of your masks, dismantle your illusions, and leave you naked before yourself. Perhaps that is what you fear the most. Not the pain itself, but the confrontation with the person you have avoided. Becoming. Yet every great transformation is born this way. The caterpillar does not politely request wings. It dissolves into chaos before it emerges as something unrecognizable. Why do you imagine your healing would cost you less? To rise, you must allow something to beyond. Pain is the midwife of that death. The irony is that pain, once embraced, loses its sting. It shifts into meaning, into clarity, into strength. What once felt unbearable becomes the very ground you stand on. Have you not noticed how the scars of your past now serve as proof of your survival, even as they once felt like the end of you? Pain transforms into story, and story transforms into power. Still, most people run. They prefer the half-life of comfort to the resurrection that pain offers. They confuse anesthesia with healing, survival with rebirth. But you, listening now, cannot unknow what has been whispered to you. The gateway you fear is the only path that leads beyond fear itself. So, the choice lingers in the air. Will you keep treating pain as an intruder, or will you finally recognize it as the guide it has always been? Because the truth is relentless until you walk through the fire. You will never know what it means to be free. Asterisk, the reconstruction of the self-healing is not about fixing what is broken. It is about becoming someone who no longer fractures it. The same fault lines. To chase repair is to keep patching the same cracks, but to pursue transformation is to build an entirely new foundation. And that is why true healing feels so foreign. It demands that you stop recognizing yourself. Most people cling to the illusion that they can return to who they once were, as if the past self is a sanctuary waiting to be reclaimed. But the truth is harsher. That version of you no longer exists. The moment pain entered, the old you began to dissolve. Healing is not about going back. It is about stepping forward into an unknown self you have not yet met. This is why quick fixes feel so attractive. They promise you restoration without metamorphosis, comfort without sacrifice, continuity without rupture. But there is no resurrection without death. To cling to what you were is to deny what you could become, and in that denial, you remain suspended between identities, no longer who you were, not yet who you are. The reconstruction of the self is messy. It is dismantling walls you swore would protect you, tearing down stories you've repeated until they felt like truth. It is realizing that what you called strength was often armor, and what you called peace was often silence. When these illusions collapse, what remains is raw, trembling. Unfinished hand, that is the beginning. Imagine a house struck by an earthquake. You could patch the cracks, paint the walls, pretend the structure is stable. You could face the terrifying truth that the foundation itself is unstable and must be rebuilt. Which choice sounds easier, and which choice ensures the house will not fall again? Healing is the second choice. Always the second. To rebuild means facing the ruins. Without turning away, it means gathering the rubble of your past, every wound, every failure, every silence, and using them not as burdens, but as bricks for the new self. The pieces you once despised become the very material of your rebirth. Healing reveals its most sacred secret. Nothing is wasted. Still, the process terrifies you, because to reconstruct is to surrender control. You cannot predict the shape of who you will become, only that you will not remain the same. The unknown to the mind feels like death itself, but perhaps this is the very doorway your soul has been begging you to walk through, the surrender of certainty in exchange for truth. Do not mistake this reconstruction for a sudden miracle. It is not a single moment of revelation, but a slow weaving of fragments into coherence. Some days will feel like progress, others like regression, but both are part of the architecture of becoming. The walls rise only after the ground has been cleared, and one day, without realizing it, you will inhabit a self that no longer trembles where it once shattered. The pain will still be remembered, but it will not define you. Comfort will still tempt you, but it will not imprison you. You will not be who you were, and that will no longer frighten you, because you will finally understand. Healing was never about repair. It was about creation. So ask yourself now, are you still patching cracks, or are you ready to lay a new foundation? The answer echoes not in your words, but in your willingness to let go of the self you once clung to. Because only in that letting go can the reconstruction begin. Asterisk the liberation beyond illusion. True healing is not silent, nor is it soft. It is not the absence of pain, but the transformation of it into meaning. Liberation begins when you no longer fear the echoes of your own mind. When the shadows arrive, you do not flee, you invite them to sit beside you, knowing they carry the fragments of a truth you have been avoiding. That is freedom. Not the erasure of darkness, but the courage to walk with it until it turns into light. There comes a moment when you realize you are no longer fighting to survive, but learning to live. The difference is subtle yet seismic. Survival keeps your head above water. Life teaches you to swim into the depths and rise again. Survival numbs, life awakens. And perhaps the most radical act of healing is to finally choose life over the half-death of endless coping. Freedom is not found in external victories, but in the quiet shift within. The day you notice that the triggers which once enslaved you now pass through without chains. The day you hear the whispers of old fears, yet no longer obey them. The day you see the scars and recognize them not as shame, but as scripture, a living text of resilience, written on your own flesh. The illusions lose their power because you no longer crave their comfort. The quick fixes, the false promises, the hollow applause, these become transparent. You see them for what they are, distractions from the deeper work. And when you no longer need them, you discover a strange new silence, not the silence of numbness, but the silence of wholeness. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff where once you trembled. Now you breathe the wind, feel the vastness, and instead of fear, you sense expansion. That is what liberation feels like, not the absence of danger, but the recognition that the danger was always an illusion. The chains you feared were made of smoke, and the prison walls existed only in your belief, and in that realization, a new self emerges. One that does not seek perfection, because perfection was always a mirage. One that does not deny struggle, because struggle is the soil where strength takes root. One that does not run from pain, because pain is no longer an enemy, is a compass pointing toward the depths of your humanity. Healing, no, then is not the end of suffering, but the end of its dominion over you. It is walking through fire and no longer being burned. It is entering the storm and realizing you are the lightning, not the victim. It is discovering that everything you once feared was part of the alchemy that turned you into something unbreakable. And here is the paradox. Liberation is not loud. It does not arrive with applause, nor with a single triumphant moment. It arrives in whispers, in subtle shifts, in the quiet certainty that you no longer need to run. It is not about becoming invulnerable, but about becoming whole, and wholeness does not need to hide. So when you ask yourself what truly saves your mental health, the answer is not in the quick fixes, nor in the desperate escape from discomfort. It is in the courage to step through the illusions, embrace the pain, rebuild from the ruins, and claim the freedom that has always been waiting. Because healing was never about finding something outside. It was always about remembering what has lived inside you all along. The liberation beyond illusion is not something to be achieved, it is something to be recognized. In the moment you see it, you will understand. You were never meant to simply survive. You were meant to rise, and perhaps deep down. This is the big question we all need to face. Are we just putting out internal fires, or are we truly rebuilding the house from within? Mental health isn't measured in temporary patches, but in the ability to take a deep breath and say, I am whole, even when everything outside insists on fragmenting me. If this video brought you clarity, remember, sharing is also a form of healing. Someone you never imagined might need these exact words today. Like, comment, share your insight, because each comment opens a new window of reflection. And each share can shine a light in someone's darkness. True recovery isn't a final destination, but a path of small steps and conscious choices. If you've made it this far, it's because you're already on the path, and believe me, that's already an act of courage. So breathe. Allow yourself to feel. If these words resonated, leave a comment. I'm ready for real recovery. Who knows, maybe your sentence will become the starting point for someone else to take the first step. In the end, we're not alone on this journey. We're together, learning to transform symptoms into signs and signs into paths. Because true healing begins when we dare to walk even when the ground still seems uncertain.